just stick to Proverbs 31 then.
Oh man, if your pickup material is just straight from the Song of Songs book, we need to do this whole series for the whole year because you'll need some help. That is what it is. As a matter of fact, with a pickup line, fun fact, I did use a pickup line on a girl, and I legitimately got a date out of it. Do you want to hear it? So I was in the mall, and this girl was sitting on a bench, and I walked by her, and I said, "Excuse me, do you believe in love at first sight, or should I walk by again?" I got a date out of it, by the way. Realized it was not going anywhere, if you know what I mean. But we are in week 3. By the way, how are you guys doing tonight? You guys doing good? Okay, awesome. So we are in week 3 of our series called Love Lies. If you're brand new and joining us, if this is your first week, huge welcome to you guys. Huge shout out for being here. What we've been kind of doing is going through a collection of talks, a series. And the series is essentially like a bunch of little talks with this underlying theme coursing throughout of it. And the theme was Love Lies, and this kind of like double entendre where it's like, this is where love lies, like as in that's where it is, but also the lies as meaning opposite of truth. And we really wanted to tackle some of the things that maybe, society, or maybe even to the point, some people who grew up in a church never really understood about what does it mean to love, what does it mean to be loved, what does it mean to date, what does it mean to get married, and all of those things in between. And so the first week we talked about singleness, talked about a little bit about how, even though we long for our spouse, our longing shouldn't distract us from our living. And then last week, we talked about our kind of the dating stages and in the relationship stage, and I talked about 5 red flags through there. And this week, we kind of want to camp on the topic of marriage, but not really the direction where you think we're going to go. Talk about how can you make a fruitful marriage, because I know in this room, the vast majority of this auditorium is not married. But what we want to do is talk about some really raw and genuine things that you ought to know before you get into marriage. And sometimes, I kind of made this illustration last week, but, about a youth kid who got his license to drive a car, and, the province wherever you live deems it necessary to hold you accountable, to hold you educated, to get keys to drive this motorized vehicle. But here we are in society giving keys to people driving relationships with no knowledge, no accountability, no education, and here they are, and we're so surprised that they're crashing all over the place to the point where 50% of marriages, including the Christian ones, end in divorce. And I feel like sometimes the epidemic that happens in our society is that people are longing to get married so badly that they think that marriage is going to fix their loneliness problem, and so they go into marriage nonchalantly. And that's why they leave marriage so nonchalantly. And that's why they get divorced, because they're thinking, oh, I'm not happy, or I don't feel this, or I don't understand this, and this. I'm just going to dip and just exit. One of our, my wife and I, we have mentors that are retired, beautiful people, and we're talking to them, and I asked them, hey, how did you last all these years? They're in their 70s, and they said, we come from a generation that if something is broken, you don't replace it, you fix it. And I love that, right? Because we live in a generation where, like, if my iPhone breaks, I'll just get a new one. And that mentality has transcended into our thinking to relationships, transcended into marriage, thinking, well, if it's broken, might as well get a new marriage, get a new wife, and not take the time to properly secure yourself, build a foundation, and fix what is happening right in front of you. But anyways, so I want to introduce you to a couple. This is Matt and Amanda, Cassie. And can you give a round of applause to this amazing couple? And so I actually met them through another friend, and I just heard that they had an incredible story, and so I wanted to hear for myself. And so Alandra and I took them out for coffee, and just hearing their story, I just got emotional because it's beautiful. There's all these different avenues and different directions we can go with. But what we want to do is just break down a little bit about their story and kind of give this picture painted of what they have gone through. And this message tonight is like, it's like super practical, okay? So, and some people you think, oh, well, like, give us the meat, give us the word. But honestly, like, don't lean away from that. Lean into like what God has done in their lives, and use this moment as like a really good inspirational and motivational time to maybe apply it into your own lives as well. And so Matt and Amanda, so can you guys tell me a little bit about like what you do right now? Like, what's going on in life? like what do you do for work, career, hobbies. Just tell me a little about yourselves.
Okay, well, I will start. My name's Amanda, and right now in this season of life, I am the executive director and founder of Scene Ministry, if you have heard of that. It's a women's ministry citywide here in Edmonton. We host women's conferences and Bible studies for women all over the city. So that's what I do. I used to be a high school teacher and volleyball and track coach, so down in Texas. I am from Texas. And, hey, okay.
Apparently there's an American here, so.
Yeah, well, we're in good company. Okay. And I have 3 girls, so I have my own women's ministry at home as well, ages 9, 7, and 4. And yeah, that's really it. I mean, I have some hobbies. I like home design. I like creative things, gardening.
I do all the home design, actually. It's
I can tell.
my forte.
Yeah.
I'm Matt. I'm dating 4 women, so I have some experience. The 3 she mentioned them, daughters. I'm not actually dating 4 women, so don't throw anything.
It's a good dad joke.
I got a lot of dad jokes. I feel it's part and parcel. But I am not from Texas. I'm actually from Edmonton, from Sherwood Park. Believe it or not, I actually was at the project before it was a project, or the project, years and years and years ago. We used to call it the market. That wasn't its name, but we were like, hey, maybe we'll meet some girls there, and we called the poll a dating poll. Never worked for me, but I tried. So I grew up here, was fortunate enough, and we'll get into some of the stories, so we'll share a little bit more, but moved away from home at 16 to go play hockey. Was fortunate enough to get drafted into the NHL. Moved to Texas to play in the NHL, which is where we met, and we'll talk about that soon. Eventually then to Minnesota to play for the Minnesota Wild, and then to Ottawa to play for the Ottawa Senators, and then hockey got faster, and I didn't. So I was like, hey, you want to give me a contract? And they were like, no. So now I'm dating 4 women. No, I work in finance now. I actually help athletes with their money. Basically, I yell at them and tell them not to spend it on stuff.
That's the best job.
It's a great job. And then a bigger and more important part, aside from being a dad, which is huge, is supporting her in her ministry as well.
That's awesome. Your last name is Cassian.
Yep.
Any relation to Zach Cassian?
I'm the older, meaner one. It doesn't bother me. Don't ever ask my mom that. She might hit you. Because she gets asked it so many times. So no relation. We looked a number of years back, Zach and I, to try to see, but we couldn't find any.
Okay.
So.
But you did have some interactions, though, playing against each other,
Yeah,
right?
I tried to fight him. Yeah, he said no. Yeah.
You tried to fight Zach Cassian, and he said no.
He said no.
Oh, man. I've lost all respect for him.
It wouldn't have gone well. No, it was a good decision on his part, but.
That was actually when we first started dating and I was getting to know him, I asked him, because I knew that he fought in the league because he was an enforcer. I was like, so how good are you? And confidently he said, I'm probably top 3 in the league. I was like, okay, cocky.
Did you know much about hockey before meeting Matt?
No, she knew nothing.
Okay,
No.
so you were just soaking it all in.
Yeah.
0.
Super gullible.
We don't watch hockey in Texas.
Yeah, got it.
We're football, baseball, volleyball, basketball, everything but.
I hear.
Yeah.
I hear.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So tell me, how did you guys even meet in the first place? You guys kind of mentioned very briefly, but tell us a little bit about down in Texas, how did that all happen?
Yeah, so down in Texas, so if you aren't familiar with hockey, you have the NHL, then you have the AHL, which is like the development system, the farm team we call it, and Minnesota's farm team, which is the team that drafted me, was in Houston. So I was down in Houston. Was down there for a couple years, and then hit the point in my career where I was back and forth. I was basically on a flight 2 or 3 times a week between wherever Minnesota was in Houston. And while I was down there, the chaplain of the team, so a lot of teams have chaplains, and he was a pastor of a local church. He came to me one day and he's like, hey, I don't do this very often. He's like, I'm 2 for 3 in my career. I got a girl I want you to meet. Don't screw it up. I don't want to go to 50%. And Amanda actually had been baptized by him. She was currently coaching his daughter in volleyball. And so we got set up on a blind date. So went to pick her up, called her. She laughed the entire time on the phone when I called her. So I was like, this is...
Listen, guys didn't, even 14 years ago, they don't call you. So I was laughing because I was shocked that he called me and asked me out on a legit date.
I was horrified.
Yeah.
But went to pick her up. Went to pick her up and got out of the car, walked around the corner, and she was in her condo complex, and she walked out, and it was love at first sight. I mean, she was ready to get married in that moment, and I'm like, this is it for this girl. I'm gonna have to slow.
Don't
play
tell me
it.
she came out in the white dress.
I'm gonna have to slow play it. Yeah.
Stakes are high, but you guys made it. Now this person who set you guys up is now what, 3 for 4?
3 for 4.
Come on.
Unless he did it again. I don't know. I probably need to ask him.
No,
I
that's
don't
fair.
know. But
He ended up marrying us too.
yeah,
So it's kinda
actually,
cool.
Oh, that's really cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So tell me, meaning, how can I ask, how old were you when you guys first met each other?
24. Yeah. Yeah, 24.
Okay, and you
We
met?
were married at 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Are you guys the same age?
Yeah.
She's like a month older.
Okay.
A cougar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you, Matt.
Robbing,
Good for you.
robbing,
Yeah.
robbing the cradle.
We all,
Yeah.
we all love those kind of stories. So tell me, before meeting each other and dating, obviously you guys got married. Just explain a little bit briefly, a little synopsis of your dating life before you two met each other.
Okay, well, I'll start this off. Just a little bit of background, because I think it's helpful to know this, but I did not grow up in a Christian home. I was actually saved and came to know Christ at a youth event. So similar to an event like this, where I got invited by a friend, and I actually was chasing a guy, thinking I was gonna, catch his eye, and then I ended up meeting Jesus at an event at age 13, and started hitching rides to church with friends until I could drive myself, and then I was going to church, to the church of the pastor that set us up, which is just crazy how God's hand was kind of in all of that. But I love that you guys are doing this, because I was not discipled on how to date. And I would say it started bad and progressively got better, but I also came from a home, my parents are divorced. It was the only memories that I have of my parents together were of them fighting. And the only memories I have of them separated are them fighting. So marriage was not modeled for me well, and so my dad was also not a part of my life from age 9 to 23. So I struggled with a lot of abandonment and neglect issues, and part of my bend was trying to fill that hole with the security of a guy. And so I was not single a lot. And I would say my dating I had strong convictions in that I wanted to remain pure, and I wanted to remain a virgin until I was married. And that was God's grace, because you look at my family life, you look at the surroundings that I was brought up in, and it's like, how did this happen? And I can only testify and say that it was by the grace of God that I had those strong convictions. But I chased the bad boy. I stayed in relationships too long. I did breakups horribly, where I would break up with a guy and then string him along for months at a time. I fooled around in our relationships. I did everything but sex. So to say that I was a virgin in terms of intercourse, sure. But in terms of purity, I would say no. So I felt like by the time Matt came along, I was ready to do dating the right way. And the guy that I had dated before him, I started dating guys in church, which was, that was when I was getting better at dating. And I kind of learned actually how to date well by guys who were discipled in how to date well. And so when he came along, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very different story, kind of the opposite, and it goes the opposite way, where I was raised up in a Christian home. As I said, I left home at 16, which is pretty young to move halfway across the country and hang out in a locker room. And if for any of you guys, a hockey locker room is just like football or basketball or any sport. It's not really an ideal place to be a Christian, and you're doing that as a profession at 16, halfway across the country from your support systems, your family, your friends, the church that you were at. So I actually did it the opposite way. I got worse as I went when I dated. So it started off kind of okay. And went sideways, and then it just continued to go more and more sideways, quicker and quicker in each relationship that I was in. And then I would say even morally, internally, got worse and worse along the way. So, I was, up until, are we calling you Amanda or Mandy? I call her Mandy. Amanda, okay, that's weird. Up until I dated Amanda. That is so weird. This is gonna be a struggle.
You can say Mandy if you want. It's all good.
I probably will auto prompt to that. But up until that point, there wasn't a girlfriend that I didn't sleep with. And the very first relationship was a longer one. When I look back at it, it's easy to see how manipulative it was from the other side, and how gullible in some ways I was on my side, and just did not do dating well. So it was kind of like a slow descent into a rapid descent of just compromising, and compromising spiritually, emotionally, physically. And it actually got to a point of, I would say, ultimate brokenness, to where, I was professional at this point already, so I was down in the States. This is before we met. And had come back home for the summer. You only have a couple weeks at home. And so I was back home. I broke up with this girl, and I'm like, perfect, I can go back home. She's a little bit questionable. It's an out. I'm leaving. It's fine. I can leave. I could ghost if I want, which is horrible. Don't do it. But that's kind of my mindset. But ended up face down on the floor because I got a phone call that, Matt, I'm pregnant. That was a call a week after I broke up with her.
That's not questionable. That's crazy.
Well, it gets. I'm trying to be.
That's fair.
I'm trying to be full of grace and compassion. Lord, give me grace and compassion. To which, floored me, and then she went on to call every family member of mine that she had the phone number to, every girlfriend of my teammates and fiancés and wives,
wow.
like everybody that knew the both of us that she had communication with. She was like, "Yeah, I'm pregnant, and Matt's not talking to me."
Wow.
And so it got to a point where, again, like I remember just being face down on the floor, kind of going like, "All right, there has to be a better way to do this." And even from a faith standpoint, and without taking up too much time, it was just, I got to a place of complete brokenness. And alongside of that, and as we'll get into as we keep going forward here, you have, especially when you start compromising on the physical side, and for a lot of guys, and for girls too, because it can be an issue for them too, you have the slow erosion of your exterior morals, regarding what you're looking at with pornography, with masturbation, with just, you're compromising everywhere at that point. And, that moment of brokenness was an opportunity to change and to run to the Lord to change. And he did, but then it was still, you train your brain paths and your brain waves and your habits in such a way that, generally it's not like an instant magic fix. Now, sometimes the Lord seems to do that, and that's amazing. You pray he always does, but sometimes it's not. And so, carried a lot of baggage of that sort into our dating relationship and then into our marriage as well. And from a dating standpoint, we actually dated very well. I think we both were ready to do it differently when we started to date. And so fortunately, I think we did the dating portion of our relationship really well. But for me, there was still, as so many guys, you kind of, and again, girls too, you can convince yourself that, getting married is going to solve these problems and these issues, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to have an outlet for, all the sexual thoughts that I have, and I'm going to have an outlet for the lust, and it's just going to be great, and everything's going to be perfect, and that's just not true. So
just to confirm, before you guys, at the moment you said I do you feel like you have settled that baggage to your description? Like, was it dealt with?
She would have said, yeah, it is. I would have.
So for our dating relationship, and we can say and testify that we dated biblically, which is amazing. Like, it is freeing to be able to say that. But we did all of the things. We did premarital. I asked all the questions. I made sure I knew what I knew about this man before getting married. And so I felt like I had checked off all the boxes in terms of my responsibility of evaluating, okay, is this the guy for me?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and there's still, and there always is. Like, I mean, you could do.
I was going to say, I think it's important, too, to say that in the midst of all of that, your outward appearance to everybody else was different than what was happening.
Was different. There's still a lot of internal issues going on. And, you know, again, moving away from home at 16, like, you deal with a lot of loneliness, which I know is even more prevalent now for a lot of people. You're dealing with a lot of issues, and, you know, in talking about this, it's like, for me, it came down to a core root of a fear of rejection that drove some of that, and a fear of, well, if you share this, well, then all of a sudden I'm not going to be worthy, or the marriage, you know, she's going to walk away from this, and, you know, it's going to ruin everything, and it's going to change, and then you're also lying to yourself to say that, oh, this will get fixed. It's just going to fix itself. It's going to get dealt with. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Yeah. Which you're just lying to yourself, and then through that ends up, you know, lying to her because of that, which ends up putting you in a position that that does a lot more damage. In the long term. Rather than actually sorting through your stuff before heading down that road.
So let's get this straight. So, which I feel like a lot of people do, is that get into marriage, similar to your situation, you did all the right steps, but there was some internal stuff that you needed to deal with, and didn't really fully deal with it, even post-marriage altar. And so, because I hear so many stories, personally, even just counseling and stuff, that is similar as yours. Like, they're doing everything right, but still, for the guy over the girl, not dealing with that internal kind of sin, baggage, weight, whatever you want to call it, the hurdles that really kind of prevents you from living life in freedom. And I love the way you said that. Like, you came into the mindset of a marriage. Not like I love what you said, but it made sense. That your lust, your sexual sin is essentially in marriage is going to be the outlet that's going to fix everything. And that's what a lot of guys think. That's what a lot of girls think too. And so no one's off the hook here. And so getting to the nitty gritty, that has crept into your marriage. And what happened in the first year, 2 years?
It was in the first year of marriage.
Okay, can you walk us through that?
Real fun. Well, without, because I don't think we need to get too in-depth detail-wise, but basically, in a nutshell, you know, she walked into me looking at stuff I shouldn't have been looking at, which she didn't know, and it kind of went from, on her end, no knowledge of any of this going on, not sharing that this is going on, her not thinking it's an issue, me not expressing and confessing and dealing with it, to it all of a sudden punches you in the face. And now you have a big issue to deal with. And it was a bombshell moment. You know, bombshell moment for me, seeing the impact that it had on her, and a bombshell moment, if you want to share for you, just on the impact it had for you.
So, first year marriage, this happens, okay? So, this kind of blows up. You walk in and see this happening. So, Amanda, tell me what was going through your mind as, number one, woman, wife, your perspective in terms of how that made you, like, what were some of, like, the initial emotions and feelings and thoughts that were going through you at the moment?
In the moment, it's just shock, and you're trying to process really quickly, because all of a sudden you have this knowledge of who you think you're married to, and then all of a sudden you see, okay, I don't have this right. And so I can go, like, I'm pretty bold when it comes to my directness.
She's from Texas, so yeah. You imagine, yeah, Texas.
So I mean, you know, I walked in, I was shocked. I had to, like, catch myself for a minute, and then went back. He's, like, face down on the floor, just completely, you know, in despair. And I just started asking questions. But there's the initial moment, and then there's the months and the year after of healing and processing. And yeah, there are a lot of questions, and I would describe it as the stages of grief, because really it was a loss. It was a loss that I had to grieve of, you know, having this knowledge and truth of somebody and then realizing, okay, this isn't who I thought. And then also realizing, okay, I'm in a covenant here. So I understood and I was passionate about what a covenant marriage means. And I knew that I needed to approach this with forgiveness and grace and to champion him in his struggle despite how I felt. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't feel, because I definitely had, in the stages of grief, one of the first ones is anger. And I've counseled a lot of married couples, young married couples as well, where the wives have come to me and they've asked me, how did you deal with this? Because they also didn't think it would happen to them. And I said, there were days where I just yelled. I straight up yelled at this man and just rage. And because I think the biggest thing for me was I felt betrayed. That's the best word I could put to it. Because I felt like I asked all the questions, and I felt like I didn't even have a choice before marriage if I wanted to walk through that with him. And so I felt betrayed, and I felt lied to. And so there is a process there of me having to work through my anger, work through that loss, and then ultimately get to a place of reconciling and figuring out, okay, what do we do next?
I like you said the word covenant, because that's what marriage is. And so for those who are new to church, covenant is this, it's more than a promise. It's this unbreakable kind of bond that God has made with his people, but also that we do in marriage as well. And breaking that covenant, grief, anger, betrayal, can I say it maybe a little bit violated? Like that sacredness was violated almost to an extent too, right? And although this is kind of blown up, man, like that essentially could have been avoided, right? So once the shock has settled and the dust has settled, what were initially your first steps into that redemption and reconciliation stage? Because I know, okay, shock at first, okay, following days, weeks, and months, I can assume just, walk on eggshells around each other in the home. So what were, after that, some of the initial steps towards that redemption?
Yeah, well, I think for me, the responsibility was entirely, this was something that was, this was me, right? This was me. This was my fault. This was my sin. This was, I brought this in. And, you see the anger and you see the hurt, and it's justified, right? This is justified. It's not unnecessary anger. It's not like I left my shoes out, or you didn't put away the dishes. This is a legitimate, sin against her. And for me, it became, okay, you went through the transition of, okay, I'm going to date better next time. But it became, okay, it's not like you're going to go date somebody else. It's not like you're going to go get out of this thing, or it's time to abandon ship. It's, what are you going to do to fix this marriage? And even more than that, because there's the spiritual side to it as well, because you use the word covenant, and our marriages are supposed to reflect God's glory. And what I'm doing and how I'm behaving is not doing that. Even if no one else can see it, and even if her and I are the only ones that know it, it's not doing that. It's not truly doing that. So it was about taking concrete steps and concrete actions. You could call them SMART goals, specific. I don't even know what the rest of the acronym means, but it just means making good goals, right? Timely, that's one of them. Reasonable, measurable. I think, is that all the letters? Is it SMRT?
You can probably run off more words later on.
Right, we'll add more and more as we go. But it basically became like, okay, what am I going to do? Because trust had been severely broken.
Yeah.
So what can we do to restore that trust? And what, for me, is going to give us the best chance at succeeding in our marriage moving forward, and myself the best chance at thriving spiritually where I hadn't been before that. So, and the irony is these are all things that you should do before marriage, but you end up having to do them after the damage has already been done. But it was getting counseling, because there's generally, there's deeper issues and deeper things that are going on. So that was one of them. Boundaries was a huge one. To this day, it can be really inconvenient and protecting yourself as a guy or a girl, in the age we are now, it's not going to be convenient. Like, I don't have a browser on my phone. I haven't since that. I can't add apps to my phone. She has all the passwords. I don't have them. So it was about taking.
We vet a lot of things that we watch.
Right.
So we look at parents' reviews. We don't watch anything with nudity. And even with our friends, like, we have friends who watch certain things, and we've made choices that may look weird or strange to other people, but we want to protect our marriage. And again, this is part of championing him and wanting him to succeed. And how can we set ourselves up for success? And so that requires putting up boundaries and parameters in order for that to happen. And so
So if I was going to summarize, it was, put yourself in a community of people that are going to be able to help you, whether that's counseling or small group. And not just small group, because I know sometimes it's like, well, how you doing, man? It's like, well, I'm doing good. And it's like, well, are you really? Like actual legitimate. Generally, I would say for guys and girls with people that are older than you, that have maybe experienced a little bit more, they're going to be able to journey through that. So, community would be really important. And then, boundaries. Putting up those boundaries to protect yourself and your marriage, because I can't remember who it was that told us this or where we heard it, but I love this phrase because it's fantastic. The devil will do everything he can to get you into bed before marriage and do everything he can to get you out of bed after marriage. That's how he operates. And so it's like, okay, well, what concrete steps can we take to start moving in that direction, to rebuild trust, and then to start actually walking that path?
When you mentioned boundaries, so let me get this straight. You don't have any social media.
I do, but it's on her phone.
It's on her phone.
So if I want it, I have to go, pry it from her fingers.
Got it.
And I'm in the room.
And she's right there.
Yeah. You don't have a web browser. Nope. What do you do when you go on trips?
Yeah, so I got a couple guys that always know when I'm going out of town. I don't turn the TV on. Like, don't even turn the TV on.
Wow.
And consistently, I have guys that know where I'm going, that check in on all that stuff.
A lot of people will think that that's, like, honestly, that's kind of crazy. That's very dry. That's extreme. But those extreme measures lead to, positive extreme results, right? And I think that, on a side note, Matt, I know at coffee, I commended you for just being so brave to share your story. Thank you for sharing that story, by the way. Although it is reliving, it's probably not fun for you.
No, it's
not. To share it. And so massive kudos, and I commend you for being so bold to share just a genuineness and a rawness from your heart. But you're not the only one. There's so many people that go into marriage. You're dating right now. And I'm going to be very blunt and very honest, because that's who I am, that you're going into marriage, you're dating, you're thinking about that's the one, and you're going to marriage with something similar that Matt has gone through. Or vice versa. It's not always the guy. It could be the girl too. And now the reason why I wanted to bring them is to shed some light on a real couple in leadership, doing amazing things. God is using them in Amanda's ministry and stuff like that. But here's the thing, is that all of this could have been avoided, right? And I will say this to you as hear my heart, okay? Just hear me, and I'll say as blunt as possible, but as loving as I can. If you are dating somebody right now, and you're thinking about marriage, and that's the one for you, and there are some sexual sin, meaning that you're still looking around, you're emotionally sometimes cheating, that you're maybe to the extent of pornography, maybe who knows, whatever baggage or sin or trauma from the past that you have not dealt with, I would caution you to move forward into marriage. As a matter of fact, I will tell you not to get married until you get this sorted, because the situation right here, and of course we didn't get into the nitty-gritty of the details, but I was not in your shoes, but just the hurt and the betrayal and the violation of that marriage that you are walking into has completely been destroyed. It's rebuilt and it's beautiful now. But in the moment, man, my heart breaks for the couple. I've sat in my office with couples who have looked me in the eyes and said, I betrayed my wife, I betrayed my husband. And walking through all of those things, those are not the conversations I love doing. I like the conversations like, hey, how you doing? How's life? Let's, get you into leadership. Let's get you serving. Beautiful stories. You want to get baptized? Fantastic. Those are the conversations I don't want to do. And so all of this could have been avoided. And so just to summarize, okay, so we'll talk more with the guys later, and the girls will do some sort of session as well. So let's keep that towards the end. But the reason why I wanted to bring them up is to share their story, because I love their story because it's so raw, it's so genuine. It's right there, okay? And maybe you're in church, and maybe you're checking out church, and this is kind of like, well, this is heavy. Well, this is who we are, okay? This is what we do at the project. We'll talk about things that we don't normally really talk about. We want to get it out in the open, because here's the thing. If no one will tell you, who will? Right? And it's super awkward with your mom and dad, right? Hey, Dad, struggling with porn. As I voice cracked there at the same time. That was me. And so, hear us. This is the heart. And I said this last week, is that the goal of this series is not to impress you or just to wow you with, oh my gosh, look at this awesome dating, singleness, marriage sermons. The goal of this series is that because of matrimony has the beauty of exposing the beauty of Christ, right? A covenant when two become one, that is complete it's wholeness, it's unified. We're made in the image of God, and when man and woman come together, that is a beautiful picture of who God is. And you have the amazing opportunity to portray that towards other people. And the goal of the series is that, and my hope is that, and my prayer for you guys, that as you guys get married, that our nation, our city, our province needs better marriages to go out into the city and unleash the beauty of the gospel. And stuff like this can hold you back from dealing with it. And so what I would say is talk to somebody, okay? You can talk to any of our pastors. You can talk to a leader, talk to your small group leader, because you'd want to get in front of it before it gets you. And so that's the essence of the message, right? Of how this can all be avoided. So how are you both doing now, by the way, as we kind of close off this little chat?
First of all, I just want to say I love this. I love this because I was that person who needed to know. I wanted to know the answers. I asked questions which may seem silly, but questions like, well, how far is too far? How far can I go in a relationship? And, I know the answer to that now, and that is, that's asking the wrong question. The question is, how holy can I be? And how can I glorify God most in this relationship? And I just want to piggyback off that, too, of just when you enter into marriage, you are going to be exposing the weakest part of yourself. And, part of the reason why we feel so secure in Christ is because Christ sees us and all of us in our darkest corners of our hearts and loves us just the same. Yep. And so entering into marriage, the goal should be, I want to be fully known and fully loved. And so hiding pieces of ourselves before marriage isn't accomplishing that goal. And so to be humble enough to say, this is how I want to be entering into marriage. But where we are now, I just met with an older lady for coffee earlier this week, and I was talking about Matt and saying that we were going to be at the project and sharing our marriage story. And I said, listen, this is my one and done, okay? Like, it doesn't get better than this. Like, I love this man. And I feel like what we have been through has made us stronger. It's given us a deeper connection, and Christ can redeem broken places and make them beautiful. And so we are such a good team. I have the best husband in the world, and if he dies, that's it. Like, I'm not remarrying. So he is everything.
So don't bother killing me, because
You ain't getting her.
Yeah. So that's what you're saying.
Man, honestly, that was really beautiful, guys. And honestly, like, it takes a lot of guts to come and speak in front of hundreds of young adults, the deepest parts of your lives. And so thank you so much for sharing your story. And we'll get into, give them a round of applause. Yeah. We'll get into some If this is your first week here, what we've been doing over the course of this month is that we're going to end soon. We'll have some worship. We're going to have some drinks, hot chocolate afterwards, and we're going to do kind of like a girl and guy session. And Matt's going to answer some questions with me, and Amanda, you're going to answer some questions with Abby. But we'll save those nitty-gritty questions for after the service. But for right now, is it cool? I'll have to pray for you guys. And these guys are doing an amazing thing just in ministry. Amanda leads, is this a girls' ministry? It's a girl.
Yes,
Yeah.
women only.
Women only. I get it.
Sorry.
We
It's okay.
get voluntold,
Hey,
so the guys
yeah, we
Yeah.
have guy volunteers. Y'all come out.
Voluntold.
Yeah,
We're not volunteers.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
Get told what
Yeah,
to do.
I'm sure there's a lot of young gentlemen here who are eager to serve if you need, I'm just kidding, at your girls' conferences. But I just want to pray for these guys and shower them with love and move into worship. So if you don't mind, if you feel comfortable, could you just maybe stretch out a hand towards these two? And we're going to pray for them, lift them up to Jesus, and thank you for their time here. So Lord, I thank you for Matt and Amanda, and thanks Lord for the bold and really courageous word that they were sharing. And so God, I just pray blessing over them. I pray protection over them. I pray, Lord, physically for sure, but even that their minds and their souls and their emotions, that whatever happens moving forward, that you would just you would get them, that you hold their hand in every step of every direction and every situation that they go through. And so God, I pray that those words they shared would continually be an influence, a positive influence towards other people in and around our city. And God, as we're done here today, Lord, may the words that are shared through their testimony, through their story, resonate with us and not leave us in a sense of discomfort and unease, but this motivation to strive to be the best person that we can be in you. And so, God, I pray that we would take it, that it'd be this aha light bulb moment, and that we would leave here a changed person. So, God, thank you for Matt and Amanda. We pray a blessing over them in Jesus' name. Amen.